Good morning, Christ Central. I have a very short passage for you today, which is Ephesians 6, verses 5 to 9. And it goes like this. Slaves, obey your earthly masters with respect and fear, and with sincerity of heart, just as you would obey Christ. Obey them not only to win their favor when their eye is on you, but like slaves of Christ, doing the will of God from your heart. Serve wholeheartedly, as if you were serving the Lord, not men, because you know that the Lord will reward everyone for whatever good he does, whether he is slave or free. And masters, treat your slaves in the same way. Do not threaten them, since you know that he who is both their master and yours in heaven, and there is no favoritism with him. Now, as I was preparing to talk to you about this, I got a very strong sense of deja vu. I thought, I'm sure I've prepared a talk for all of you on this passage before. And I know we've been now in lockdown for a while, but I don't think we've been going quite so long that we got through the whole Bible and gone back to where we started. And then I worked it out, because I have prepared a talk on almost exactly the same words, but it was on Colossians 3:22 to 25, which is repeated virtually word for word here. This is not surprising. Lots of Christian authors do this. I get a lot from reading books by Tom Wright, and I've found some very helpful insights into what the early church was like from that. But having read several books, I do find myself thinking, hang on, he's recycling an argument from another book here. He's sort of batting it out. And, well, he's in good company. It looks like Paul did this too. I find Paul's acceptance of slavery as a normal and natural thing makes me uncomfortable. Why didn't he say it was wrong? And indeed, when the morality of slavery was finally being debated in the 18th century, Christians who were against abolition, and there were plenty of them, could reach for this passage and say, there you go, it's in the Bible, Paul accepts it, nothing wrong with slavery, it's perfectly normal, move along, please. I don't think you can say, oh, well, slavery in the ancient world was not as brutal as slavery in the 18th century. True, the lot of a household slave was pretty crushy. After all, the people Paul was writing to must have had sufficient freedom to nip off occasionally and be part of what their masters would have considered probably a bizarre cult. And many slaves were able to gain their freedom. But life as a slave rowing a galley, down a mine, on a very large industrial farm can't have been much fun. And you were at the mercy of your master, who could be cruel or kind, and could do what he liked with you as you were their property, including using you for their own sexual pleasure. So I think we must remember that Paul was a man of his time. Slavery was how the ancient world worked. It was an essential part of the economy. It was normal. And a world without it was beyond imagining. And we are all, to an extent, limited by our times. And we probably will be judged harshly by later generations for stuff we see as normal now. 19th century English Christians now come across as oddly hung up about behavior we now see as normal, and tend to sound unpleasantly racist. If there are humans around in 500 years, I will not be surprised if they go, blimey, the early 20th century, why on earth did they burn all that fossil fuel? Didn't they realize it was wrong? Why on earth did Christians go along with all this madness? We do it because we are people of our times. And I think we need to accept that Paul was too. But that's a dangerous train of thought. If we accept that Paul's vision is limited in this respect because there's only so far he can see, might it be limited in other respects? For instance, about the suitability of women for leadership. It also implies that the Christian vision of justice could be an expanding thing that gets deeper and wider as time goes on and we reflect more on the nature and character of God. I think it has to be, because we face challenges that were unknown in the first century. Global warming, for instance, surely a moral issue that the people of Christ should be grappling with. But dealing with an expanding vision of justice is unsettling stuff. How do you know it's expanding in the right way? Setting that aside, Paul is undoubtedly giving sound advice in the context he finds himself in. The slaves he's writing to can't change their circumstances. There were slave revolts, most famously the one they led by Spartacus in 71 BC. Interestingly, these weren't aimed at ending slavery. They just didn't want to be slaves. And they always ended badly for the revolting slaves. 6,000 slaves were crucified after the Spartacus revolt. So to encourage slaves to try and attempt to change their situation would be cruel, as it would simply end badly for them. Paul recognizes that slaves are of equal value to free people. They're not second-class citizens in God's eyes, and he gives them advice on how to live with circumstances they can't change, and how to live with self-respect in these difficult circumstances, to transform your service into serving the Lord. I don't think this comes as general advice to accept the injustices of the world. I don't think it was wrong for the civil rights protesters in the US in the 1960s to demand better, or that people trapped in modern slavery shouldn't get out. But it's good advice on how to cope in a situation where resistance would be suicidal. And it's good advice for us too. Many of us will go to work in an hour or so, and let us serve our masters well, as if we're serving the Lord, competently and not as clock watchers or slackers, or simply to advance our careers. We will earn the respect of others, and if they associate Christians with diligence, competence, and hard work, that will be no bad thing for the cause of Christ. Thank you very much.